All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Brisbane City Council meeting. If you would please join us for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Note for the record that all council members are present.
All right. Someone like to adopt tonight's agenda?
A second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Before we start oral communications, I'd like to take a moment of silence to recognize the passing of Gabriel Maldonado. So if we take a 10-minute moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. Oral communications, this is an opportunity for anyone to speak before the council on something that's not on tonight's agenda. Any takers? Okay. And then, Michelle, just to let you know that our little light thing is broken. It got busted last night. So. I don't have to. So Sherry's got a little timer thing, but you know.
Set your timer. No.
There you go.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I watched the budget meeting last night from home, and there's a couple things that were distressing, and one is that I feel like so far it seems not fiscally conservative, and that concerns me, especially since I've been reading articles about sort of a downturn coming and a lot of possible turmoil coming, and I hope we do take a conservative approach, except for the things that I want you to fund,
Sure.
Of course. So, and the other thing that was really distressing was the talk about the school bus for the high school. I've long been a supporter of public education and public paying for transportation, making it accessible to every single kid to go to school, because education is so important. More than ever, it's becoming the division of the classes, those who are educated and those who are not. And college is becoming unreachable, and God forbid high school should become unreachable. And that a few miscreants create a situation where the rest of the children, and they are children, do not have transportation to high school is ludicrous. And I don't know what we need to do about that as a community, but I want you to do something about it, and I want Brisbane to provide a bus to the nearest high school in the district, being Jefferson. We went to Jefferson. We never, ever had fights like that on the school bus, ever. Had any situation. They smoked pot in the back, but we never had any threatening situations where people got in fights, and it's just not acceptable. And the school district or the bus dis people, I'm sure, know who those people were, and maybe those individuals should be counseled and taken off the bus, but all of the students should not suffer for that. And it's really a distressful situation, that because there are children, if you put it on the onus of the parents or other people to get the kids to school, and it's not a situation where they can exactly walk to school, there will be kids who do not go to school, who cannot go to school. And that is simply not right. High school, up to high school, should be accessible to all kids. So I don't know what we're going to do about that, but I am deeply distressed by the situation with the school bus. It's untenable. And you need to work, I think, with the school district to find out who those children are, and have the perpetrators counseled and removed from the bus, and have the other students be able to take the bus to high school. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Just wondered if any of you know of the public bus options to the other schools. If anyone can shine light on that.
I don't know the number, but there is a Samtrans bus that does go from Brisbane to
22.
Jefferson and Westmore.
Okay, so
22.
22.
okay, so it already exists.
So this was just to go to Pacifica's two schools, Terra Nova and Oceana.
Okay.
It goes, the 22 goes to Jefferson and Westmore.
Right, and Maria worked with Samtrans to ensure that the 22 met both times for Jefferson and Westmore's opening bell.
Okay.
So that we were able to do. This is just the bus that was to go to Terra Nova and to Oceana.
Okay.
I think it's important to also state that the perpetrators are now banned from that bus service. And I know that Stewart did offer to place a police officer on the bus and remove, those rights of those children have been revoked. And CYO said that even having a police officer ride every single day on the bus was not an option that they're willing to explore whatsoever. So I think, we all share that same concern of getting our kids to school and how that's a really important part of our community, especially because we don't have a high school in town, and I think we're all going to work really hard to find a way to solve that. But there were already measures that were taken to try and address that, so we're going to keep looking into it.
I absolutely do not think it's appropriate for us to have need a police officer on the damn bus for $100 an hour. That is just ridiculous. Parents need to parent their children.
So it's like, how do you go, I think the struggle is like, how do you go about that discussion and making, and there's clearly an issue here that is probably not just with a few children, but may just be within the culture of the kids that are riding this. I don't know what it is, but we got to find something.
Well,
I agree.
know part of what it is. And part of what it is that we don't enforce the rules. I mean, I saw photographs from, I hate to bring it up, but I saw photographs of the opening of the skate park, and we didn't even enforce our own helmet law, okay? I mean, so kids they're taught that they can ignore the rules, and it's pervasive. When we don't even, we spend almost $500,000 on a skate park, and we have rules posted, but we're not willing to honor those rules, even during the opening of the skate park. So how can you expect them to honor the rules on the school bus or any other rules? This is what we're teaching them in our society, and it's wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't even want to go down that path, but
No, I agree. I think that's something that obviously, we learn with a new bus system that we're not messing around, and those are lessons learned, right?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I extend this
Okay.
a little bit? With a little trip down memory lane. We're not in the bus service, okay? We are not in the bus service. The city of Brisbane is not. How we ended up here is years ago, and I'm talking about 1996, the city council at that time decided to give to Jefferson High School money, which we were giving also to Brisbane Elementary School, to use for computer labs, advanced placement classes, and an extended bus after hours for athletes and people that want to do after-school activities for Terra Nova, which that bus at the time was about $20,000 into the mid-2000s, okay? All of a sudden, Jefferson Union High School District is no longer doing bus service, starting to cut back on it. So we're now taking that money and applying it to the cost of a bus. Then all of a sudden, Jefferson Union High School District is out of the bus service. And that puts the onus on Brisbane, where we started providing the funding for a bus, which Stewart, I think it was, got in touch with CYO, and we did the contract with them. And so the city of Brisbane has been paying for this, but it all started out with good intentions on doing advanced placement courses, computer labs, and after-school stuff, and, educational stuff, not a bus service. So here we are now on a bus service, scrambling, and we got some stupid little punks that want to screw that up. And Michelle, you're right. When we went to school, our era was a hell of a lot rougher than these kids are now, and we never had a fist fight on the bus. And we had 3 buses, if you recall. They were done by Greyhound. And so to me, the 2x2 committee needs to meet with Jefferson Union High School District and just pass the nice bond. What, 71%? They need to get back into the bus service. And whether that's taking kids to Jefferson or Westmore or wherever, Oceana, Terra Nova. I mean, I'm upset by this. I am really upset. I was upset to hear that email. Chief, I'd love to take those kids and do you know what to them, you know, because apparently it's not happening at home. And I'm really livid about this because, you know, now it's like, oh, the big bad city is not providing a bus. We never were in a bus service. And, you know, and so now the onus is on us because some stupid little punks want to be little badasses, which they're not, just punks, and it screws it up for everybody. You know, so I had to throw my 2 cents.
Thank you. That was a big 2 cents, Clark. Thanks.
Okay, 25.
So, you know, a comment was made about the helmets, Chief Macias and Commander Meisner. I mean, can you just address that? What's the police role in regards to the helmets?
Well, with the introduction of the skateboard park, we've had some complaints with smoking in particular that we've sending officers to deal with, but in conversation with the Park and Rec director, we want to come up with a education program before we start any enforcement. So we're going to be working on that in the near future to get the word out and let people know what the requirements are before we move forward with the enforcement aspect of that.
And that's in regards to the helmets?
You were saying, and safety equipment, right?
Safety equipment, okay. All right, thank you.
Oh, I'll make it fast. I did have a citizen complain to me because previously with our older skate park, we allowed children to ride scooters, even though there was a sign that said no scooters. And there was a child that was riding a scooter and was harassed by other much older skateboarders, saying that he needed to leave because he was riding a scooter, and was eventually approached by police. This kid's like 11, that he couldn't be riding his scooter at the skate park because it says no scooters. And I understand when I did mention this to Clay that we are going to be amending those signs to include scooters. Is that correct?
So in January, a state law passed that does provide a level of liability coverage for us for scooters. So we need that. The sign was based off our old sign, which was before the law was passed. So we are researching what other skateboard parks have, and we'll have a more complete set of rules for the sign, and we will run that by Michael before we put it up.
Okay.
So we're working on that. Parks and Recreation should have that finished early next week as to what the rules are that we'll provide to Michael to make sure we're properly covered, and then talk about how do we educate the public and and what we need to do to enforce it.
Okay, awesome. I just know that so many of our younger children can't quite ride a skateboard yet, and I think they've been really excited about having a new skateboard park, and they can ride their scooter. And that's something that's a little bit safer and more comfortable for them, so I just would love to be able to see them utilize that park too, since many of them came to city council meetings and gave their input along the way. It'd be a shame if they were told, oh, nope, not for you. So if you could just update us when that happens, or with the new language, that would be awesome.
And I also had a comment on the skate park. So I'm glad to hear that there's going to be some education on the safety requirements. I also think, though, that, you know, we need to, at some point, you know, in the near future, we need to make sure that we do enforce the rules on that, because I think the kids, you know, they know they're supposed to wear helmets. It's not about someone telling them, you know, you're supposed to wear a helmet and you have to wear all the protective gear. It's, you know, they just think it's not cool or whatever, and so they don't want to do it. But I think we really need to create a culture that accepts wearing the helmets and whatever other safety gear is required, because, you know, although there aren't that many accidents. When they do happen, you know, they're pretty serious injuries, and I want to make sure that, you know, we protect our kids from that sort of risk and encourage them, you know, from the beginning, because I think we really need to set that expectation as early as possible of, you know, what is required.
Only takes one fall.
All right. So, oh, there.
I had a comment about the bus service, and I know that in our report that it was alluded to that it was one fight that caused, or that was maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, was one fight on the bus. And I can't imagine that it was one incident that caused the bus service to say, no, there is no amount of police protection that can make us run this bus. My first thought was that they wanted to get a better contract with more financial gain to it to make it more cost effective for them. I see all these shuttle buses that are out staging out at the marina parking lot, waiting for their next loop for all the different businesses out here. So I know there are buses available, and I can't imagine that we couldn't find some method to get kids to school. But it's good to know that, and I think we need to really work hard to make sure parents who don't have transportation available this coming year know that it's a possibility that their only transportation is going to be Jefferson
Or Westmore.
or Westmore. But I don't think it was just the one incident. I think it has been ongoing bad behavior.
I know there was bad behavior since when I was in high school, even though I didn't go to any of those schools, but I had friends that rode the bus, and this type of behavior was happening back then. I graduated in 2009, so, I mean, a long time. I don't think it's just been one class that's been right. I mean, this has probably been pent up for a while, like that far in the past, so.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the consent calendar, we have several items regarding the Sierra Point Lighting and Landscape District, as well as a comprehensive agreement between the JPB, Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Board and the City of Brisbane regarding the electrification of Caltrain.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Okay. All right, moving on to the public hearing. We have an open public hearing in regards to Brisbane's weed abatement program. Chief Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor Lentz and council members. Keep it short. This is the 8th year of our program. On May 20th or 30th, we checked all the businesses and residents in the city, came up with a short list of people who were still not in compliance. This hearing tonight is for any of those people to object to their status as not following the abatement program. We do have a few that are still out there, but we have no indication whatsoever that they will not comply. And as every year we work with them and give them as much leeway as we possibly can. A lot of people like to wait till the end because they don't want to have to do it twice. So the meeting tonight is to open the hearing and receive any objections, to close the hearing, sustain or deny the objections, and then to direct us to move forward with any abatement.
All right, any council questions?
I'd like to open the public hearing to hear objections by notified property owners of properties on which a nuisance has been declared to exist.
Sounds good to me. Let's open up the public hearing to that. Are there any takers? All right, I'll take a motion to.
Make
So moved.
second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any council discussion, or someone gonna? I guess
There's no action that needs
yeah,
to
there
be
is no
taken on
action.
this, is it?
We need to give direction to.
give direction to
The enforcement officer.
clear the properties.
Okay.
So that's the motion.
No, I mean, there really isn't one. No, I didn't think there was.
Oh.
So, okay. Thank you, Chief Johnson, for coming and providing the notification. Okay. Next up is our budget workshop. And we will start with Public Works.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. We are indeed going to start with Public Works, and we're going to do, as we always do, Public Works. We're going to do the marina, we're going to do open space. We cover emergency services and Public Works. There we go. So these are the results in the department programs. I think you've seen this last night, and I know that you were all at the workshop where these were developed, so I'm sure you're very familiar with them. Go into the funding by program, and again, this is for all the Public Works function and for the Office of Emergency Services. One of the things that was really interesting to me in this is to put in the program for purchase of utilities. I understand that the people who developed this program or priority-based budgeting wouldn't find that to be a typical, very pure program, but for a Public Works director's mind, that's actually really helpful, because as I sit there and look at that, I see that there's $2 million in my budget that I'm really, really interested in, but I don't have a ton of influence in it. And that's both on the demand and the supply side, because on the one hand, on the supply side, although we belong to Bauska and we try to make sure that we're getting water at a fair price, and while we do have a contract with SFPUC for treatment of our wastewater, and while you have a number of staff members who work at the League of Cities, and we try and make sure that the pricing that PG&E is giving you for electricity and gas is fair, there's not that much control we can do.
A lot of it's out of your hands. Yeah.
And then on the other end, on the demand end of it, I don't have a contract with each of our water and sewer customers as to how much and when they're going to need the water. So we put these estimates that go into your budget. We make some assumptions. We do some extrapolation, and we think that's what's going to happen. And then we get the prices that the SFPUC and the PG&E tell us they're going to charge us. So it's just, for me, it's just interesting, because it helps me focus on what I can and can't help you work on. So here are the program highlights. These are the things that we're going to be working forward. We've got a retaining wall down on San Bruno Avenue that we need to replace. This was actually a project we had tried to start a couple of years ago, but what we found out is that there's a large SFPUC pipeline that's right underneath it, and we've had some challenge with getting that design, getting a design that satisfies our need to hold up the slope, and getting a design that satisfies their need to not have a really heavy load on top of their pipeline. So we're gonna try and get that done this year. The traffic signal loop detector installation. Many of you will recall that a number of years ago we went back and we put the video, the camera-operated traffic timing signal. Those aren't working like we'd like them to do. 100% of the time, they're just not as reliable as we'd like. The reason we had put them in was that the loops that are in the ground get cut up every time you have construction going through there, and then they end up not working, and then you have to put them back, and it's an ongoing battle. But one of the things we found with those camera systems that we installed is that obviously we've got high winds here, and it's, as an example, one morning I was out walking my dog, so it was probably 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm down there at Mission Blue in Guadalupe, and I get out to that intersection, and I look up, and we've got 3 cameras there, and there's a hawk seated on each of the 3 cameras. And I thought, well, I wonder how those things are getting moved and out of alignment, so they're not pointing in the right direction, because the birds are using them as perches or perches in addition to the winds and everything else. So at a couple of select locations, we're going to go back and we're going to put the in-pavement loop detectors in and try and get a little more satisfactory service and get those signals working.
So this will help with the intersection at Bayshore and Old County, that you're not waiting there forever when no one else.
Yeah, Bayshore and Old County, and really one of the biggest mystery ones we have is Bayshore in Maine. That one just likes to throw a signal that there's a car coming out of Maine or industrial all the time, and there's never one there. It's a mystery car. So we're going to go through and pilot putting them back. So we'll see how that works out for us. The next thing we need to do is we want to connect City Hall computer servers and the phone system to the backup generator. When we designed City Hall, the intent was that we were just going to have the police department on backup power, because that was back when we had the emergency operations center over at the fire station. The fire station already had a generator. So we assumed that if we had an emergency, we were going to operate from there. In the interim, we've relocated the EOC to here. It's actually above you in that back room that's the police department training room. And so with that being put here, it makes sense to bring all of our computer services and to bring our phone system onto backup power. So that's going to take a little bit of work. The next is replacing a water main out at Sierra Point. There is a valve box out there that is starting to sink. It's starting to settle. And if you wanted to locate that particular box, if you were dining at the Radisson and you were coming out on Marina Boulevard and making a left on a Sierra Point Parkway, as you go through that intersection and your wheels go thunk, thunk, a big metal noise, that's the lid that's settling, and that's part of why you're hearing that noise. So it's a fairly expensive project for lifting a valve box and lid. It's $30,000, but we actually think that's a very reasonable price considering the amount of work that has to be done. And I'm sure you understand that part of why we're having settlement out there is that we're out over a municipal solid waste landfill, and things continue to settle as they age and as they decay. So we have some of those issues we struggle with. The next item is I'm actually going to give you a little presentation from a consultant on that one. This is bid-ready plans and specs for the demonstration turf project, so I'll talk about that just a little bit later. We're also going to install some storm drain trash capture devices. This is the last cycle that we have of those. We've been spending about $50,000 for 3 or 4 years now, and this is the last set of the full capture and partial capture trash devices that are going to go in. You'll recall that these are a direct result of the municipal regional permit that the Regional Water Quality Control Board has issued as part of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. And I'm really proud of myself that I got through that without using a single acronym, because it's just a very acronym-intense environment. There are some water meters. It's a project that we need to work on. This is not a line item that you're going to find in there, but replacing the water meters is actually a project that the utility division staff is working on. What we're finding now is, as you'd expect, the fireflies that we've had in our system. And the firefly is a type of device that's mounted on your meter box. It's connected to your meter. And then when the crew goes through on a bi-monthly basis to read it, they have a touch wand that they reach out and touch it. Well, that system is now a generation old. They started installing those over 20 years ago, before any of your existing public works staff were here. And so we are at the point where we're going to have to replace those, which is somewhat fortunate. It's unfortunate that we're going to have to bring you a project and there's going to be money involved, but the technology has evolved to the point where you will have automatic meter readers, and you will have an automatic metering infrastructure. And what that will allow, particularly important because of the drought, nearly hourly reporting of your water use. So it'll be much more available both for city staff and for citizens to understand what their individual water use and when it is. So as we continue to move forward, it's certainly my sense that our ability and the need for us to really maintain the very low water consumption that I'm very proud we do here in Brisbane is going to be continued. It's going to be forced. We're going to have changes in the way that water is delivered and the supply it's available and when it's available. We're going to have continued drought, so it's an important project.
All right, so that's done by GPS then?
It's a wireless system that's set up. It's not done by GPS, but yeah, what they do is they set up mini little Wi-Fi systems so that the individual meters are read, at one little hub, and then the hub reports back to a main hub here in the engineering department.
Will that have a cost saving in general for less manpower to go read the meters?
I would like to say yes, but I think what in reality it will do is it will free up the man hours that we've used in walking those routes manually so that we can get to some of the other projects we've put aside. As always, we've got things that we need to do in maintaining our water and wastewater system that we haven't been getting to, and we put those lower priority projects away. I think we'll be able to get to those. So not a direct cost savings, but maybe a long-term cost savings. We're going to be maintaining things that we haven't been maintaining, so it will save us the expense of them having semi-catastrophic failure. Valley Drive Lift Station Crane Refurbishment, that's a system that was put in, I think we put that in 2001, 2002. We've got parts of it that are just getting old and needs to be done, so we'll get that taken care of. We also have grinder cutter screen replacement. Part of what we're doing in that is that we're putting some in reserve so that in an emergency response, those things break, we can go out and we can put it in right away, so we don't have a lack of ability to pump things through there. What happens with the screen and the grinder is that we have submersible pumps at the lift station. If you've been out to, you'll recall we've lifted the lids and you see the pumps are submersed in the water. Well, submersible pumps are designed to pass a solid of a certain diameter. You would be shocked at the types of things that we get in our sewer pipe. We get 2x4s, we get heavy metal objects. One of the worst things we get are these the rag mops that you use to swab the deck with. Those kill grinders for some reason. And so the grinder and the screen is ahead of those pumps so it can chew those things up so that the pumps don't get damaged and or jammed. And so that's why it's important that we replace them, and that's why it's on here. And then, of course, one of the big projects that myself and the city manager are directly involved in, the design and the new Brisbane Library. So you've previously passed the professional services agreement contract for that, and we're all very excited about it. So with that, what I would like to do is I'm going to transition back. I promised you I was going to have a little presentation for you on the bid-ready plans and specs. And as the city clerk is ably bringing that up, I'm going to briefly introduce Mark and then give you a little background on how we get to where we are. So Mark Slichter from Kellner Associates is going to come up and actually give you the presentation. How this came about was a few years back, the city council said, you know, we really would like to better understand what's going on with the trees in Crocker Park and get a better idea of the species and how many of them we have. And so that was a good idea, and so we went back on it, because we've got a really good handle on central Brisbane, but we didn't have a good handle on both the public and the private trees in the park. And as we're starting to see more and more of the trees get diseased, it was important to understand those groupings and the species so that appropriate recommendations and the right biodiversity can get put back as we do it. But as we were doing it, the drought was starting to pick up a little bit and starting to have some impact on it. And it occurred to staff that maybe what we ought to do is also look at doing a demonstration of replacing what I refer to as ornamental turf, so blade grass. Particularly where blade grass doesn't have any purpose. Certainly you can say that at the community park, blade grass has a purpose. That's where people in this community recreate. We don't have big lawns. We don't have big lots. We're not known for that. But everybody likes to go to the park. Certainly you look at Mission Blue Ball Field, you look at Littman Ball Field, Brisbane Elementary School athletic fields. That's where our kids go to play, and that's absolutely wonderful. But as I started to look around, if you look at the blade grass at the entry to Crocker Industrial Park, why is that there? And why are we putting hetchy water on that in a drought? Well, we weren't. That's one of the first things we started doing as the drought came in and we had to have reductions, was we stopped watering those areas. But we thought, well, why are we turning things brown? Perhaps what we ought to do is we ought to think about having native, non-invasive, low to no water use plants there, and see if we can't come up with a design that's pleasing to the eye, that still fits certainly the Crocker Industrial Park, the areas we have. So at that point in time, we still had some money left over in the budget from the tree study, so I reached out to Kellner and Associates. We had meetings with staff, we had meetings with city staff, and at least twice with the San Bruno Mountain Watch staff, came up with some concept plans, came up with some pallets for plantings, took it to the Open Space and Ecology Committee. And it's one of the items that we've put in the budget here that we're asking you to do, is to give us the money so that we can develop bid-ready plans and specifications for it now that we've got this concept. But I wanted to show you the work from the concept plan so you would get a sense of what it is and hopefully get your approval for it. So with that, I'll ask Mark to come up.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you, council members, for giving me the opportunity to do a brief presentation here. What I'd like to do is just walk you through what we've come up with so far, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. And then basically, if you've got some questions when we get to the end of this, I'm happy to.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your full name.
It's Mark Slichter with Calendar Associates.
Lister?
Slichter.
Liston. Okay.
Slichter. S. Slichter.
Oh, okay.
So as Randy said, we've had some meetings with staff, had some input from San Bruno Mountain Watch, went to the Open Space and Ecology Committee, shared concepts with them, and so it's and all this has transpired since the beginning of the year, and so this will kind of catch you up on where we are right now. We've got 4 sites around the city, and they're different scales, so they're great opportunities in terms of what the scale of space. At Brisbane Park, we've got some smaller spaces, turf spaces, as Randy was mentioning, blade grass. Not the main turf area, but some of the peripheral spaces. I'll show you those in a second. Crocker Industrial, right there at the entrance, there's a great opportunity there to demonstrate another type of landscape, something that might be a little more appropriate given water restrictions and given drought. North Hill Pump Station is a smaller site, and so that what we're proposing there is a kind of a busier landscape, but it would have some relevance, perhaps more relevance to residential type landscaping, residential type projects. So let me just start walking through these. They'll make more sense then. So what you see here are in red are the areas that we're looking at. Some of the landscape around City Hall has been done relatively recently. Stormwater and bioretention areas are already in place between the parking lot and City Hall. So what we're looking at is the turf frontages that remain. There's a big swath along Park Place and some smaller pieces scattered about. So there we go. There's the piece along Park Place, and then on Valley, and this is over by the parking, and as you enter the main parking lot. So quickly to the concepts, what we're showing, we're at a conceptual level. We've got some ideas with respect to plant types, but what we're looking at is putting together compositions that are pleasing to the eye. So massings of different types of plants, different heights and textures, colors, and character. And these are the plants that we're looking at. I won't go through these in detail unless you want me to. But what I will tell you is that everything that we've selected is low water using. Many of them are natives, though not all of them are natives. And the palette is something we continue to refine in conjunction with input from the city, from San Bruno Mountain Watch, and from the Open Space and Ecology group. So these are some of our plant materials, different forms, colors, and textures. I'm going to move on. Brisbane Park, again, the reddish, the brick color represents the areas of study. And so we've got a narrow strip of turf and a hedgerow there between the fence and the curb at the park, a piece of lawn that's beyond the fence right there at the curve. And then there's a small space, a small piece of lawn over by what we've been referring to as the Christmas tree area. So those are all the locations that we're looking at. And at a conceptual level, this is what we're proposing as a replacement planting. And the plant types are shown here. Moving on to the industrial park entrance at Valley Drive. This is one of the highest visibility pieces, and this is interesting in that it's basically the entrance to the business park, right? So what we have here is an opportunity to demonstrate alternatives to the turf that you see in front of quite a number of the businesses up Valley Drive. So the turf on one side and then the turf on the other side would be replaced. And what we're looking to what we're proposing here, first pass, is a boulder treatment, so larger massings of plant materials. This is the kind of space that people are passing through in a car, so it needs to make an impact in the 5 seconds or so that they move through this space. And so here's a visual simulation of the kind of thing that we're looking at, where we've got alternating bands of material carrying through that space. And these are the plant types that we're looking at as candidate plants to achieve that effect. North Hill Pump Station is our last location, a smaller piece of property. So just this right here. So it's you can tell just by glancing at it, it's more of a residential scale, and that's kind of what we like about it. There's an opportunity to do some things here that would give residents that this has potential to give residents some ideas about what that they might take home and do in their own home. So this is more of a specimen type planting where there's quite a variety, kind of a mosaic of plant types all through here. And one of the notions here in this location is that we would have interpretive signage. This would be this kind of space that you would park here, get out of your car, walk around, and look at what's there. And there would be tags that would identify the type of plant materials that you're seeing there. So these are the candidate plants. And in this particular location, the majority of these are natives. But as I said before, all the plant material that's proposed is low water using. That's a real quick run through. I probably left some questions for you there, so I'm happy to respond to any questions that you may have about what we've got here.
All right, anybody have questions for Mark? Laura?
I have a question. So I'm curious to know why those were the locations that were selected. I mean, I understand that's where a lot of the existing turf is, but I'm wondering about the intersection off of Bay Shore at Guadalupe Canyon Parkway. I don't know if that has public property that has grass on it as well, but that's another intersection that came to mind.
These are the parcels of an appropriate size, ma'am, that we own.
Okay,
So that's why we were trying to do it. That's so we've really referred to it as a demonstration.
I see.
And what we're hoping to do is that because we picked big enough parcels that we had full control over it, we can do it, that maybe initially we will get the businesses to voluntarily want to transition over it, and maybe even transition that over into municipal code requirements, that as people hit certain triggers, this becomes part of the outdoor lawn conservation.
Okay, and I like the idea on what you've proposed. The one that struck me though was the bands at the entrance to Crocker Park. It just wasn't something that I would have come up with on my own. I don't know. It just, to me, it was a little. You could see the background of the mountain behind it, and it kind of drew attention away from the mountain because you looked at the landscaping and saw like lines on the ground a little bit. So I'm just curious to know how you came up with that design and what kind of approval process will go forward for, what will actually go in. Will it come to the council again, or is this kind of what it's gonna look like?
I'll speak to the first part of it, and then we can get to the second part. With respect to the design, what we're looking to do is have a fairly bold statement. There's a lot of perception that native plantings are smaller scale, are kind of fussier, and what we're trying to demonstrate is that you can achieve substantial effect, aesthetic effect, visual impact with native plant materials. Okay. In this fashion. So we've got large massings of fewer types to achieve that effect. And what the expectation is that the businesses will be looking to have, one of the things they want is identity, and their landscaping is part of the identity of the business. So if they can see that you can make a bold statement with water conserving plants, it may make it a little bit easier to move towards that kind of a palette. Okay. So with respect to approval process, as Randy mentioned, we're just at this stage now. What would follow this would be preparation of working drawings, and there'd be a number of submittals associated with that, and there's junctures throughout that process where the plans come back to the city for review. It would be at the discretion of Public Works with respect to where those would be brought back to council. Okay. I think that's actually really your prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that if it's going to be at the entrance to town, that I think it's something that would be helpful to have public input and to have the council's, discussion around what that entrance will look like in terms of the plantings. Because yes, it is a bold statement, but I don't know if it's necessarily one that the majority of the people would find pleasing. So I think it's something that should be discussed.
Laura?
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for that. So Randy, you said that Open Space and Ecology and Mountain Watch was on board with this, or
Yes, sir.
not
Not in opposition. Certainly, I think my recollection, I think an honest assessment of where San Bruno Mountain Watch is that they would like everything to be 100% native and only native. And part of the reason why we've brought Calendar Associates on board is that they have a lot of experience doing this in other areas. And so they understand striking that balance. So we're not 100% native here, as Mark's indicated to you a couple of times, and I know that that's their preference, and we just think this is going to work better that way. We also have to balance that we're trying to make it transitional, as you will. no one's trying to make the entry to Crocker Industrial Park look like one of the canyons on the mountain. But I think what we're trying to do is take that level of intensity so it's closer to that, but not 100% wild. Because if it were 100% wild, we would knock down the buildings around it, and that's not what we're trying to do. But we're trying to get less of a disconnect, less of a stark, harsh disconnect from the mountain by having buildings, blade grass, and then you're done.
Yeah,
Open Space and Ecology also had comments on it. I think they were somewhat aligned with that perspective too, that 100% native to the maximum extent possible would be great, but my recollection was that they were very much in favor of it, and they thought that the concept, the idea was a great idea.
I think it's certainly a good starting point. I know a lot of folks have, through the years, have always, requested that, the native plants, and, I always think of Dana Dilworth, probably the most prominent, who's been very consistent for the last 25 years of saying, use natives, and, but I understand, using the combination, but I think as long as they're not invasive is probably the utmost importance, along with being drought resistance.
And the good thing about plants, quite frankly, is that you can put a design out there. You can rely on a consultant and their expertise and their past experience. And if you decide you don't like them, you can plant something else. It's not a hard concrete structure. It's a plant. And if you decide, well, it doesn't fit, that doesn't work, we would like to do something different, you do it.
Yeah. Back to the Christmas tree part.
Mm-hmm.
That area that you showed, at Christmas time, don't a lot of kids gather around there, or is that the part where they gather around the tree?
Yes, yeah, there is some contact on that area here, and so that's one of the things that we're trying to put in consideration, and we're also trying to. I mean, I think Mark and his team have come up with some good ideas. Or, well, can we do kind of a red and green motif to reflect the Christmas aspect of it, but also do that.
Well, if you have, I guess my point is, if you have a bunch of plants up on, up above the surface, versus something that's flat, how are the kids going to get around a tree at Christmas time, or do you want to just kind of rethink that a little bit, or maybe tone it down a bit?
It's an interesting question, but I wonder why we're reserving that area. I mean, because you're right, yeah, they do get around the Christmas tree, but it's not like they're opening presents around the Christmas tree. I mean, the light comes on and Santa comes off the truck in the street.
But that one area kind of provides also the pathway too. I noticed a couple stepping stones and people walk through there, and if you put a bunch
and that could be preserved. All of that could be preserved. And I guess go into dangerous territory here. I think we probably need to discuss the tree at some point.
Put some thought to it, because I don't want to see kids. Oh, hey. Sorry, kids, you got to stand over there away from the tree. It's Christmas. Bad Santa.
I completely get what you're saying, sir. Yeah, there's balances in everything we do, and how we're trying to get there.
Just give some sensitivity.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
At the same time, I feel like one of the issues is that children do climb the tree itself, and I know that. And that's something that has been discussed before. It's there's this interesting balance, because I don't know that it's great for the tree. That when we were doing the fire hydrants, we use that area to have peen and people come because it was on the corner and they could see us. And I was constantly watching children climb the tree in the summertime. So having more plants there may deter some of that activity, but then there's the flip side of the coin. When it's Christmas, you may want to gather there, so it's an interesting kind of thing to think about, kind of on the other end.
Ma'am, I can assure you that everything I've done here has had proponents and detractors throughout the 15 years. We never can fully satisfy everyone. We try our very best, and I think we try and do the greatest good that we can. But thank you both for your comments.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have any questions?
Well, for Randy, I think since the public may not be aware that because we're doing this during budget, I think we're trying to determine priorities and what we may or may not want to spend money on. So I would like to hear what kind of difference in watering what kind of savings per square foot traditional turf type landscaping that we have in these areas versus when we put in low drought tolerant plants would be, and also what kind of budget you're looking for this particular implementation, so that we know what we can all say, oh, we like this. It depends on how much it's going to cost. My particular want would be, while we may not be able to put in 100% native requirements into all of our planning and building codes, I think that anything that is sponsored by the city should be predominantly, if not exclusively, natives to the area. And that, as I've seen it where we've done it out in portions of the yacht club area, it can be very dynamic, and it doesn't take a lot of maintenance. I think some of the striping, kind of bold patterns, certainly is not to my taste. And I listened to this presentation in depth when I watched the OSEC meetings, and I was particularly struck by that seemed to detract from the view of coming into town as something that didn't seem appealing to me. And that I think that I've seen in other areas grass plantings and other plantings in other communities that still have a lot of impact without having to be going non-native or, palm trees or whatever it may be. So I think that the implementation would need to come back and wouldn't really be for these hearings, and would like to hear sort of financially what you're suggesting on cost for this.
If you don't mind, I'd like to respond to your last comment first, because I couldn't be in more agreement with you. Part of the conversation that we've had, and part of the reason why we brought San Bruno Mountain Watch into this so early, is that it's absolutely our intention that to specify that the plants are going to be available, and that we were going to, after we've come up with the design, we're going to ask San Bruno Mountain Watch to seed them for us and to grow them. So that'll actually put the project off a little bit, but we want them to come out of the nursery. We want them to be native plants, so we're completely on board with that. As far as the financial aspects, what we're asking for now is $40,000 for the plans and specs. I don't know if I want to put you completely on the spot. I know you did a water study. Do you recollect kind of what the water savings was?
I
Certainly.
don't know.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I can get that information for you. That was part of what we looked at as we moved along. And it's really striking to me that there's two pieces of information I need to get you. Certainly I should get you the study that we looked at to see how much water we're going to be saving. And I definitely need to bring that to you before I think I bring you full plans and specs, because I know you wanted both be good stewards of the environment, but you also want to be good fiscal stewards as well. So those two things need to connect, and they do connect. There was a time period over which it absolutely made sense to do it. And then I feel like the other thing I need to do is make sure that I give you an opportunity to, at the very least, comment on that entryway. I think one of the advantages I have is, as we've gone through this process, Mark had presented a bunch of examples of where that's been done in other places, and it ended up looking really, really good. My aesthetics, obviously we all have different opinions on it. So I think we probably need to get that to you so that you can, and maybe it makes the most sense for the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee to be the folks who take a look at it, because we'll count that as part of our facilities. And so route it through there to make sure people are comfortable with it. Does that respond well enough for now, ma'am?
It does answer the questions that I think are important for this discussion, and this discussion is more about the finances than the implementation.
Thank you.
Randy, this scene that we're looking at right here.
Yes, sir. So that is the existing rain garden that was put in.
Didn't the city? Wasn't the city acknowledged as?
Oh, absolutely.
We won some awards.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I look at this, and I think it's very, very attractive. I don't know if there are any San Bruno Mountain natives in this palette of plants here, but just the the different levels, and it feels inviting. It feels rural to me, and that's one of the nice things about the industrial park is that even though it is an industrial park, it still has that garden type of a feel to it. And so, to me, having this type of look in the industrial park, whether it's these plants here or using San Bruno Mountain natives, which I would prefer as well, but it's just this style seems to.
That resonates with you.
Yeah, it does. It does. Okay. So, but like Terry was saying, I mean, this is really, it feels like the appropriate place to be.
Yeah.
Talking about which types of
about
plants
a final plan that we haven't seen. Well, you bring up some really interesting comments about that. I'll tell you, as a public works director, I love that rain garden. It's extremely low maintenance. Not only does it not use water, it treats water.
Yes.
I couldn't have it any better. And there will certainly be other green infrastructure projects that we bring to you. But one of the things that I do want to highlight for you now is we're not trying to go out and redesign the park right now. What we're trying to do is with different size parcels, let's just call it parcels that we have, we're trying to go out and do different demonstrations that people could look at and that the community could look at as well and say, which one of these at different scales and at different places do we want to move on? So I really don't want them to all be the same. I want them to be demonstrations. And I think if you take a demonstration and you take out blade grass that we're putting Hetch Hetchy water on, and if at the end of the day you said, nah, I'm not so thrilled about that, maybe that's not the one we want to do, and when we think about redoing these and we think about, because there's going to be a bigger project, I think, as we move along, we're not going to go through Crocker, because Crocker was master plan, right? It was Halprin was the one of the landscape architects involved in it, and the blade grass issue that was very popular back in the time when he was designer, and people just weren't thinking, about how much potable water we're using and where it comes from, and that's okay. That's not a judgment against them. It's just a statement of fact. But before we go through and change it, there's going to have to be some guidance on what people can change, right? We're not going to say, you wouldn't want the park to look like everybody get their landscaping at a yard sale, right? So because this one looks like this, and this one looks like that, and that one's dead grass, and this, you would want it to transition so that there's still some consistency throughout the park. So really, this demonstration project is just the very, very beginning of a conversation, but it's putting something on the ground for people to talk about, to like, to not like. That's okay. Both of those positions are okay as we move forward, but as long as we're all moving forward to relying less on potable water, we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And when you look at this, I mean, this is a great example. And so having more examples like this in the park does then set, the example that it would be nice to do this throughout the park.
Yes, sir.
And so, I think it's good for us to continue that conversation and later on bring something back to us.
One quick question: who designed this?
Yeah.
The one right outside City Hall. Is it the same landscape
No,
designer?
it was not. It was not Calendar.
Yeah.
I don't recall the consultant's name. This is when we did the City Hall remodel.
Uh-huh.
This is prior to 2007 when that design went in. And actually, the member of my staff that was the engineer that was the primary lead on that is Matt Fabry, who's now the countywide NIPD's coordinator.
Okay. And is there a reason why we reached out to his company as opposed to the one that
Yes,
designed this one?
because we were trying to do a different project. Because what we're trying to do now with the turf replacement is not, this is stormwater treatment, and the turf replacement is not intended to be that.
But it could be.
Are we in, since it's a
No,
demonstration?
not the sites we have, ma'am. But I promise you that we will be bringing to you green infrastructure projects that will be treatment projects. I guarantee you that's going to happen. But that's just another piece of what's happening. The distinction is that with a project like this, we were able to do that because we had space available and it was adjacent to a parking area that we could intentionally sheet flow so that it went into this. We don't have that opportunity, say like the entrance to Crocker Park. Because you've already got your elevations established with the park and with the roadway, it would be exceptionally difficult to turn that into a treatment area and then have it infiltrate somewhere and go elsewhere. So, but we do have other areas we can design. In fact, we were just the CCAG Technical Advisory Committee I was at today. That was one of the biggest conversations we're having. I know you're obviously a member and interested in CCAG, so we're developing the stormwater plan, the stormwater resource plan, about trying to put together both individual cities and multi-city cooperative programs to do stormwater treatment. So that's coming down the pike. That is another response to the regional permit from the board, and that one is primarily to treat PCBs to meet our load reduction into the bay on that.
All right.
I think every project going forward needs to have the attitude and the look and the ultimate goal of treating stormwater and pollutants as we go forward, as much as possible.
I think that's very consistent with complete streets and green streets. Yes, ma'am. I fully support that.
Any other questions for Andy? All right, just one last question, Randy. Sure. So everything that, all the plant varieties that you would want to put in the industrial park, could they be supplied by San Bruno Mountain natives and provide the aesthetics that would be appropriate for the industrial park?
So I'm going to say I don't think so all, because I don't think that they would want to grow non-natives in the nursery. I'm just talking off the top of my head here. I know the nursery coordinator's not behind us. I see Ariel's here, but Ildeco's not here, so I don't. But certainly it's our expectation that the majority of the plants that we would put in, we would ask San Bruno Mountain Watch to grow them for us first.
What's, Mr. Mayor, if I could, what's the ratio between natives and non-natives?
Haven't quantified it, but I'd say we're something like 60-40 or 65-35, something like that.
65
Native to non-native.
being non-native?
Other way.
And are we saying natives or
65 native.
Yeah.
native here or native California?
Native.
Native here.
Native here. Not non-invasive. Native. The balance, the smaller number would be non-native but non-invasive.
Okay.
All right. So,
Thanks for the conversation on this. I appreciate
Yeah,
it. We're
thank
trying to
you, Randy.
do some easy projects.
all right. Did you want to move on to the marina?
I would love to. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what, do you have a page number for your, are you going through numbers or are you just doing your
I'm just going through slides,
presentation?
ma'am, but if you got a question and you want to do numbers, we can do numbers too. I'm just going on what you're seeing here, the program-based budget.
Okay.
But I'll
I'll go with the flow for a while.
Oh,
I'll
wait.
be here until the end, ma'am.
Super quickly,
ma'am.
Stuart, I know yesterday Terry asked for something for Park and Rec that had a compilation since there were so many different portions of that part of the budget. Can we get a page like that for Public Works as well?
Yes, and also for police.
Great,
I'll
thank
do
you.
those.
Sorry.
That's fine, ma'am. That's fine. So here we go, on to the marina. All things that float. That is our goal down there. These are the results. These are the department programs that you see. You see the funding by program. Interestingly enough, this is essentially an enterprise fund, and so the overwhelming majority of it, the money is spent to operate the Brisbane Marina, and we'll kind of go quickly into the program highlights. The biggest thing I'm trying to get done this year is to complete the dredging project. Need to get that done by the end of the dredging season. We started this month, restarted, and things are moving along just famously. We're taking dirt and moving it somewhere else, so that's a good thing. The next thing we want to do is repair the public restrooms. There's one restroom that's left that we haven't got to. It's the one down by Dock 1. It's just, it's in bad shape. Everything that you're going to see in here, except for the last bullet item, the maintenance we do at the marina, the challenge of having a facility that you own at sea level is that it just gets beaten up by the salt water. Stainless steel rusts down at sea level. I don't know how that happens, but it does. And so we just have to go after it, and we just have to maintain it. And particularly when you have something like the public restrooms, where they're getting the bay breeze that's getting them into them, that's getting salt, and then they're getting covered in water anyway because people are using the showers and such, they start to fall apart, and they just need some much necessary tender love and care. Painting the dock gates, the same thing. The gates have probably not been painted for over 15 years, and they're showing their age. They're weathered, they're tired. It's steel. If we don't get to them, they're going to fall apart, so we need to get them stripped and repainted. The last item is adding the security cameras. We do have some cameras down at the marina now. The particular camera systems that we're talking about putting in right now, though, is to monitor the approach channel where people are coming and leaving the marina. We used to have a pretty significant problem with thefts going on. We've started to have a couple small problems again with that, and so what we want to do is we want to make sure that the harbor master has the capability to see which vessels have come in and out of his marina, so that we can track that, and so we can provide necessary information to the police department when we're starting to get those.
So we're talking about weather-borne cameras?
Yes,
I mean, out in the channel, or at the entrance?
That far enough out there, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So that's the extent of it. That's all I've got for marina.
All right.
Happy to take questions, or I was going to, my plan, in my wild fantasy, I was going to let Ms. Kinzer come up and do the Open Space and Ecology Committee review, and we could then take questions across the full spectrum of public works, or I can take questions whenever it pleases the council.
Can I?
Yeah, let's just do the marina, since we talked about it.
Can I make a comment about the marina and the usages out at the marina? Over the last couple of years, I've seen a lot more usage going on out there.
I'm sorry, ma'am. How do you mean? What usage do you mean?
Public use, actually, not just the marina itself,
I see, yep.
but at the recreation area, the parking area, the showers, the toilets, the bathrooms.
Right.
I've seen a lot more activation.
Right.
Some of it's good activation, some of it's not good activation. And one of the things that I've noticed is that we do have a lot of the shuttles staging there. And so that's putting quite a bit of usage and quite a bit of extra work on our public restrooms, especially at the south end by dock number 1.
I think you're right.
We are also having quite a few people that come out, whether it's for good or for not good, and use the parking lots at that south end. And that's putting a little more stress on the area and making it more active, which is a good thing.
Right.
The one thing that I've noticed out there that I think really needs some work is our northern parking lots need speed bumps. They need something done out there because we are having way too many people out doing donuts and up to nefarious things at the northern end. The southern end isn't so bad because that's where the offices are and that's where it has signs of life.
Yeah, more people parking because it's used. So certainly,
and so it's safer to
Center
park.
Point Yacht Club, people being parked there stops the donuts from happening.
Right, and there's not as big of open space with no supervision.
Yes.
At the north end, I mean, I don't know how many speed bumps it would take to slow down the donut makers, but it is really annoying to have them out there at all hours of the night, and it is a safety issue, and it is very annoying. So that's something I'd like looked at sometime in the future on, whether we put boulders in the parking lot or something to keep people from being able to do that, because it's just an attractive nuisance.
Ma'am, certainly if it's a council's pleasure to restrict that, we could bring you back a price to put in the concrete parking stops in there. I mean, and
I think
can run
that
that
might
number.
be more than we need, but I think some sort of speed humps that keep that from happening could be an issue. But it has been nice. I've gotten lots of comments about the condition of the docks and that the boaters and tenants there are appreciative of the maintenance work we've been doing. The people I've talked to have all been on board with the dredging that has started again, and we're really glad to see that progressing. And so I'm really glad that we were able to put that in the budget and have the marina pay for it out of its budget, and that it also has a public benefit to keeping the area active and keeping it available and safe.
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you. We agree with you 100%. And I will work up some numbers, and I'll figure out how to route it back to the council.
Nash, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Clark?
Yeah, I do. I just have a comment, Randy.
Sure.
I wanted to say thank you to you and your team on doing the plan on the marina, on upgrading the docks and everything like that. I know that was an issue for a couple of years, and you put a plan in place, and we put the personnel in place, and now we've moved a few personnel off of that. back into Public Works, and it seemed like it was a good plan, that you got the expertise out there to fix the docks and do all the maintenance and stuff like that, and I commend you and your staff on that, and job well done.
They very much appreciate the council's support on that, sir, and I think all the boaters and people that are regular boaters down there really get it. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter what you have down at sea level, it needs attention, and
Yeah, and I think with dredging the marina, it's really going to make an impact as far as, keeping the marina full, even though, our fees are going up, but we're still in that lower end of the rung, I believe.
right, we're at the lower end of the median. Absolutely correct. Yeah, and we've got, and we're starting to hear that, and so we were running probably 88, 89% occupancy before we started doing the dredging. The dredge caused us to move some people around, and we did suggest that some people maybe might want to find a different place to put their vessels anyway, because they weren't in the best shape. You recall last year we had probably half a dozen or so vessels that we had to abate because they sunk in their slips, and so we're trying to not do that. That costs money. But right now we've been running maybe 82, 83% occupancy even through the dredge, and so that feels pretty good. That's a little bit less than I had anticipated. We were going to be down for revenue, and I think as the word starts to get out more that, wow, the Brisbane Marina, the docks are in pretty darn good shape. It's freshly dredged. It's really just a hop, skip, and a jump to get up towards AT&T. I think we're going to come right back up, and we're going to do fine. We're already starting to hear that people love the marina again, which has always been the goal. Not so much as I don't want to just say love it, but part of the mantra that I've tried to pass to staff and that they've really taken on board is that I'm trying to establish a marina down there that is a family-friendly environment. That doesn't mean I just want families down there. It just means that if some young couple wants to go down there with their young kids, they should feel very comfortable doing that. Mm-hmm. And that means so we've just got certain activities shouldn't be happening, and we should all just be gentlemen. And gentle ladies. We all should be nice citizens and just cooperate and get along. And when you provide those people good facilities, they want to come. They want to come to our marina. And that's what we're seeing. That's the crowd I think we have down there now.
So with respect to the dredging, I'm also glad that we were able to include that in the budget last year. And so has that been completed? And the dock repairs, is that work all done? What's the status?
So the status of dredging is because of the volume, we had to do it in 2 seasons. So season 1 was complete. And because you've only got a short window of when the dredging permittees, there's a whole group of organizations that allow you to dredge. It's June through the end of October. So we just started back up phase 2 right now. So we have every expectation that they will be complete. It's a contract requirement that they be complete, but also based on their progress and their performance from last year, we certainly expect that they're going to complete that. The dock repair projects, I'm anticipating that those will be done by this fall, but the way we have scheduled the transition in the budget is that the 2 employees that have been down there full-time doing that work are scheduled to transition from the marina to a buildings and ground team on July 1 of next year. So that's why if you look through the budget, if you were seeing that, you'll notice all of a sudden, why does staff costs and B&G go up, but it goes down in the marina? It's because we're transitioning those people. I want to give them that full year, not just because I think they need slack, but because I think what we will find is that there's just other things that we can do and let them get caught up and get the marina in good shape before we leave it with 1.5 full-time employees.
Okay. And then in last year's budget, I recall there was something about a boat launching area on the south side of the marina. Am I remembering correctly? Was there some project for?
So last year, I think I did have to come to the council and request some money for design of a hand launch ramp.
Right.
On the south end. That our project was not recommended for funding. They ended up very shortfalled on the funding, and Division of Boating and Waterways. And it was
There's a lot of issues with doing hand launching at the south end, but again, that's...
Yeah, and designing around those issues resulted in about a $600,000 project, and they were not... DBW was just kind of like, I think the answer I got was, we could do a couple more projects and not just yours. So let's do that.
Okay.
Disappointing. Again, as I think as Councilmember O'Connell pointed out, activating that area, something we'd really like to do. We'll keep trying. Things will happen. I'm not going anywhere for a little bit. We'll keep looking for grant money.
All right. So Randy, so I'm glad to hear that the dredging and sounds like the dock maintenance work will be finished sometime next year. So as Clark had alluded to, you know, our slip fees are fairly low. Will that be a time for you to reevaluate and see where we are in the marketplace and perhaps raise the slip fees to a more appropriate level that reflects how nice our marina is? Granted, I know that we don't have amenities like some of the other marinas, but we will have a you know, fairly refurbished marina.
So being in a good place in the market for whatever you provide is always an important thing. I think we're at that point right now in the marina. I think we've had 2, and I believe it's 3 in a row, Stu, is that right? Three increases?
We are scheduled for 3 10% increases. I think we did our
Okay, so we
first
already
one last year.
we've already put it in place. Okay,
That's to pay for the, that's to pay the bond.
Pay for the dredging.
So that's a pretty
Absolutely.
significant bump, and it puts you in the median, and I think it's fair to say that the Brisbane Marina ought to be in the median of marinas. So unless I had some other major capital projects that I needed funding for, I wouldn't anticipate today that I would come back to you and just suggest that we increase the slip fee.
No, it sounds like we've already put that in you know, we tied it to this.
To the
work
dredging,
being
yes, sir.
done.
Absolutely. So making sure it's
that's good.
self-funding.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to
Open space?
Open space,
Oh,
yes.
let Ms. Kinzer come up.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. The open space budget and program primarily fits within 3 programs. Council commission support, and that also means committee support, so staff support of the committee's work with council, stewardship of the natural environment, and workforce development. And council commission support lends itself to the council goal of community building, stewardship of the environment, closely works with the goal of ecological sustainability, and workforce development falls under the goal of management. The funding was split out pretty much 2/3 in stewardship of natural and built environment, about 3% in workforce development, and 1/3 in council and commission support. That number for stewardship of the natural and built environment is higher because some of that money is the staff work, and some of that money is contract work on vegetation management of the Brisbane acres that we own. Some of the highlights of the program are, again, the vegetation management. That's particularly the Brisbane acres that we own. We've been maintaining vegetation out there as long as we've owned those properties. You've given us a little more in the budget starting with the last budget cycle, and we're able to do kind of attack even more invasive plants. We're able to remove some trees that are invasives, eucalyptus and Monterey pines that are dying, so that's appreciated and is going towards good work. One of the smaller items that we're working on as part of the Climate Action Plan implementation measures is a do-it-yourself energy toolkit that we'd like to lend out possibly through the library or work with the schools or possibly the hardware store. We've borrowed this idea from Santa Clara County. They had a lot of success with it. It's got things you can do at the home to make it more energy and water efficient. It's got tools and guidelines, and we're putting that together, but we need a little bit of funding to kick that off. And we've also asked for funding. I understand this is not in the city manager recommended budget. It's to be considered to restore Firth Canyon. So we're asking to remove all of the invasives, do erosion control, and then plant some natives back. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
All right, any questions for Karen? Karen, what are in the budget are we looking at with your presentation?
98.
98. Sarah, do you have any questions?
What kind of funding are you looking for the Firth Canyon project?
I think that was in the presentation last night, but that ballpark estimate that we have was $63,000 to do the entire Firth Canyon.
And that's something that's beyond the scope of our volunteer labor?
You know, if you use volunteer labor, it would take a number of years going back to that site and would disallow us from covering a number of different sites that we've moved around from year to year. So, you know, it could be done, but you wouldn't see it happen anytime soon.
Great, thank you.
Anybody have questions? Karen?
I have a question.
Okay, Madison.
Can you explain more about this do-it-yourself energy toolkit? It sounds very interesting.
I can't. It's got ways to test your water, your toilet, see if it's leaking. It's got ways. It's got a kilowatt meter where you can check out what energy is being used by appliances and devices in your home. It's got. We're thinking of putting in coupons or samples similar to what Santa Clara County did for LED light bulbs, and so we're thinking of having coupons that are usable at the hardware store, so we'd provide part of that cost, but people would still have to contribute money to buy LED light bulbs and such. It's got, there are window treatments to keep energy from getting out. There are outlets, there are insulators that you can put in your outlets to keep energy from escaping when you're heating. So there are all kinds of tools to check how energy efficient your home is, and then we were thinking about coupons that would encourage people to buy aerators for your faucets and the like, and we can certainly give you more information offline if you want to know
That's
more detail
awesome.
on that.
I really like that idea. It's very interesting. Great.
So are these toolkits, it says it's for lending, so once someone brings it home and uses it, they can then bring it back to the library or wherever it is, and it can be reused? It's not like an expendable toolkit?
Well, some items will have to be restocked.
Okay.
And then coupons would have to be restocked, and we want to use a lending system, so if somebody breaks a tool, you know, they've signed a waiver and they have a liability, just like if they didn't return a book. But so we do have cost in the first year to get the toolkit set up, and then there is some restocking of it, so we have a request in the second year to be able to continue doing that.
Mm-hmm. And is there any funding for that, or is that recommended to come through the city funding? Are there grants available or anything?
I haven't seen a grant for something like that. We're asking for $1,000 the first year and $500 the second year.
Okay. Sounds a good idea. And I have a question if you're done, Madison.
I'm done.
On the Firth Canyon restoration, so can you talk about, you know, the importance of doing this in this year versus another future year, and maybe Clay can comment on why it wasn't in the city manager's recommended budget?
This is a committee request. It's brought up, it's one of the things that the Open Space and Ecology Committee is in place for, is to kind of bring to staff's attention things that they might not know about in town or be as aware of as people that live here. And it's overgrown more and more over the years, and it's just a request that let's not put it off any longer because it's just too big of a project to do with volunteer labor. It actually, the contractor that we use at the Brisbane Acres gave us this cost estimate, and he said at first he thought he could use equipment, and he looked closer, and it all has to be handwork, so it's a lot of man hours of going in there and removing the invasives. So we're just interested in not putting it off, but you know, it could be in the second year's budget. That would be still better than not doing it.
Could I piggyback on that one? Karen, on the vegetation management, so this is on, all the acres are under HCP, and Clay, this might be a question to you, and so the county also puts funding towards that. Do they ever look at commingling and combining and look at, you know, how do they view it, I guess is a question. Do they look at what they think is the most impacted area to work on an annual basis? And I'm asking Karen if the county would put their funds towards some of that too, because it is under HCP, and rightfully, if it's an impacted area, it's not just Brisbane Acres because it's under HCP. The county is supposed to help fund that also, but I know that they it's been woefully unfunded
Yeah,
for years.
particularly, you're talking about Firth Canyon.
Huh?
You're talking about Firth Canyon
I'm talking about the vegetation management
of the acres.
program for Brisbane Acres.
I'm starting to work with them more. Fred Smith has managed the vegetation management of the acres, obviously, for a number of years, and we're trying to transition that not too quickly because it's new to me. So we've both been working on it the past couple of years, and he's walked me around through the acres and identified some of the areas of focus in the past. And we've also started meeting with the staff because San Mateo County Parks has hired an ecologist. Is that her title? Ramona Archega. And she's taking maybe a little more active role than they had in the past. So she's been asking to meet with staff, and they do a lot of, obviously, butterfly identification, and then they're focusing somewhat more on replanting host plants and natives than taking out invasives, and their budget is very limited. So I think for the whole habitat, I mean, I don't want to quote a number that I don't remember exactly, but I think it's around $100,000, that order of magnitude for all of the HCP. So we're doing, and we hear this from our contractor, we're doing much more in the acres than they're able to do in all of the county park and the HCP. We're doing a lot more focused and better management of those properties. Obviously, it's different in the part that's open.
We are on the board, so Clay, maybe that's some feedback to take, of how they actually do that,
Terry?
I was going to say that last night we heard from one of the members of the Park and Rec Commission when it came up to issues that were being requested for funding. And I do see we have a member of the Open Space and Ecology Committee here who may want to give the feedback from the Open Space and Ecology Committee on their reasoning for the importance of Firth Canyon and the plan of what we're doing on habitat or acres management. So I didn't know if we wanted to give Michelle Salmon a chance to comment on that. I think would be nice.
Go through it first?
Oh,
finish my questioning? And
yes,
all that?
yes.
So, I mean, so Clay, in regards to the HCP funding on that, is that something, Karen's saying that, what we do is more effective? Is that something that we can go back, because you sit on the board, I guess, as you and the city manager of South San Francisco, Daly City, and Colma, is it? Yeah.
The county manager.
In county.
Not Colma.
Yeah. I mean, to look at, the funding of doing some of these things that do fall under HCP, how is that money, what do they do? I mean,
Well,
exactly.
annually, the county staff will come forward with a work plan, and that work plan will identify specific projects within the HCP area, primarily, I think, for the most part, within the county park system, and they will bring those forward to the HCP board. So that's basically the process that's used, and it's usually done around this time of year. I think Karen can probably speak best, and I think she has, in terms of the coordination that city staff has with the county parks department. But there's kind of two different things, and I know that while the long term we hope there will be additional funds available to the HCP, it's pretty stretched right now. It's been pretty limited over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's been woefully unfunded. And Karen, just a side note before Mayor turns it over to Michelle. Under stewardship of natural and built environment, what is that exactly again?
That's kind of everything that open space and ecology does, I think.
I mean, that's separate from vegetation management, right?
So, I mean, if you remember the way that the program budgeting works, is we were trying to pull the line items into the programs that we provide. This was we talked about this through priority-based budgeting. So those items which deal with stewardship of natural and of the natural environment fall into that. So that would be the vegetation management plan, that would be staff time that's spent on that. So there's a number of items that are put into
I
it.
see. So it's not a.
It's not separate of, so what you're seeing is the detailed line item budget, and then the detailed line item budget relates to the programs.
No, that makes sense now. Thank you. All right.
And can I throw in another comment too, about, since you brought up funding, is the HCP working group is looking at ways to fund more projects, but there definitely is an opportunity. I think it's in, applications will be due in January of not 2017 but 18 for the planned conservation area, the PCA, that we applied for with the county. So I don't know if that's going to be a huge amount of funding, but we're definitely planning to look for specific projects and try to get those additional grants to do more work.
You know, I want to piggyback on what you were saying, Clark. So, Karen, do you ever get the work plan in the budget for the HCP year by year on the projects that they work on?
I've just started being in communication. Like we've just started meeting with, not just as in yesterday, but in the past year, I've gotten more involved in meeting with the county staff that works on their program.
And then Clay, you know, since you're on the board, right?
Yeah, the trust board, yeah.
Okay, so being on the trust board, do you provide direction or any recommendations, I should say, to the HCP staff on particular projects that you might, you know, like the city of Brisbane would be interested in?
Yeah, if we had a project or something that we wanted to promote, we could do that. That'd probably be the forum to do it. I would say that it's probably best done, as Karen is suggesting, in terms of the working relationship, because frankly, by the time a work plan gets to the board, you know, it's pretty close to the beginning of the budget season. It's really not the time to introduce something brand new.
Sure.
So it's I think the way we've been trying to do it on a staff level is probably the appropriate way to do it.
Yeah.
And Karen's working with the Open Space Committee, which I think is probably the best suited group to input on that. And you know, again, the HCP's resources are just so limited. But I would say over the years that Brisbane has had a lot more active interest in the HCP than any of the other two cities.
Sure.
So, you know, I think our interest and our perspective is well respected within that process.
Mm-hmm. You know, and then we have the endowment. So how is that money being used?
Well, it's part of the budget. The problem is we're in such a low interest environment that it's not generating huge amounts of money. Now, someday down the line when, you know, we get more normalized interest rate environment, it'll generate more dollars.
Okay, so that endowment's not, it's only in like
It's what they call a non-wasting.
Non-expiring endowment.
Well, non-wasting, I think, is the technical term that they use. So basically, it's whatever interest is accrued off it in a year. So all the $4 million is there with the county for investment purposes. So it's whatever that generates on an annual basis.
Yeah, but we don't know.
And there's limited things that governments can invest in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're only allowed, you know, we're not allowed to invest in those things that, you know, during these kinds of times would make more money. So it's limited to
Lehman Brothers.
Yeah, AAA paper. It's limited to government bonds. It's limited to CD, you know, bank-backed CDs, and you know, this is the same thing when you look at our investment report. You know, I think our best investment going out 5 years, which is the limit of government investments, was 2% as of last month. Unfortunately, that one got called. So I think our highest interest earning thing at the moment is 1.7%.
Okay, so all right, and so but we don't know where at least that minimal amount of interest is being applied to.
Well, yeah, it's part of the budget.
It's part of the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm just
For the HCP.
For the HCP, so it supports the programs of the HCP.
that they're doing right now. But okay, but you don't have a clear understanding of where that money is going.
Well, how about I do this? Because I think you all have an interest in this.
Right?
So why don't I'll bring forward when we have the budget for this year. I will make sure that you all see that. for the HCP. You can see the programs and the efforts that they will do. You know, it's mostly vegetation management types of things.
Can I?
And that's kind of what they do. And so I'll get you a copy of that. I can get you a copy of the last year's one, and then they do an annual report on their activities and stuff. So I can get all that forwarded to the council.
Okay.
All
right.
If I may, normally the HCP funding that goes into the HCP is not spent on private land, though. It's on items that they don't go onto people's personal property.
Correct.
To do management, and they, in the same vein, would probably not come onto our property to do management under that HCP plan. So that needs to be on property that's in the public realm, or in the HCP's area of interest.
So
I could be wrong here, but I don't believe I believe they primarily have used the funds for the county park system. I can't really think of any projects that have not been part of the county parks. I mean, I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious, you know, if there are funds available that could be used in the Brisbane Acres. I mean, I hear what you're saying about private land. I don't consider the Brisbane Acres to be private land, you know, that we own. I consider it to be public land, and, you know, if there can be collaboration to receive some of those funds.
I don't think there's been a whole lot of interest in the part of the HCP management to do that, but, Karen,
Yeah, I mean, my limited understanding is that they just do not have a big pot of money. They have to do an assessment. They did a 30-year assessment, and they have some staff, and they have a limited pot of money for consultants, and they have to spread it over quite a big area. Their latest plan does have planting some host plants a little bit into the acres, but they just can barely. That's the sense they're giving us, and maybe the numbers would reflect that.
Okay, thank you. Right, so, Ariel. Oh, no, Michelle, did you want to come up regarding open space and ecology committee member?
As a longstanding member of Mountain Watch and the Open Space and Ecology, and an attendee to several TAC meetings, and having read all the reports, I can shed some light on this. First of all, there's restrictions on what HCP funding can be used for, and it is primarily to enhance and protect the habitat of the endangered species that are listed in the Habitat Conservation Plan for which it was enacted, which would be the Mission Blue Butterfly and the Calliope Silver Spot. So any of the decisions made by the Habitat Conservation Plan manager revolve around that part of the habitat, and it is restricted. So they can't just, you know, spend money to protect other rare plants, other rare animals on San Bruno Mountain. It is very prescribed. If you had read the Habitat Conservation Plan, you would understand that. So the funding is very limited. Prior to the funding from the endowment, the approximate annual budget was about $126,000 a year that could be devoted to habitat management. Now, with the endowment, I think it's about $140,000 a year. I'm not entirely positive, so it's gone up a very tiny amount, which was brought up during the hearings that the endowment money would not really produce the amount of money needed to truly manage the habitat for the endangered species. The vegetation management program that the Open Space and Ecology Committee oversees, you know, through Fred Smith and the funding from the city, doesn't just manage for the butterfly. It manages for the incredible rare habitat that we have in the acres that encompasses way more than just butterfly habitat. We have some of the last remaining native grasses in California that are California native grasses right up here in our acres. We have an incredible rare species habitat, a living, breathing habitat that encompasses many animals and plants, not just the 2 federally or 3 federally listed endangered butterflies. And so the funding that we do from Brisbane, which is so vital, and the acres that we have preserved, which are so vital to the entire functioning habitat, and not just revolving around the species identified as needing protection in the Habitat Conservation Plan. So while it sounds like, can we have some of that money to work on our acres, it's more like we should be giving more money to the habitat plan to protect the entire environment. And the Habitat Conservation Plan is finally being managed by people who are knowledgeable and have obligation to the public, meaning, the county parks, with a biologist. We've made tremendous strides. The Board of Trustees has been so supportive in supporting the Technical Advisory Committee and the recommendations to do a 30-year review of the management of the habitat that's gone by so far. We are so grateful for that support because Fish and Wildlife did not want to spend the money for that. So I am very grateful to Clay and the other trustees for being trustees and helping us manage the money, helping us manage the financial part of it, and letting the biological experts manage the habitat part of it. So, and Brisbane and the Open Space and Ecology Committee is trying to work very hard with the habitat manager, the county, in managing not only just the habitat for the butterflies, but that full living habitat of San Bruno Mountain, which is a treasure and a miracle for us. So as much as it sounds good to ask them for funding, it's more like they should be asking us and the other cities for more funding for the habitat. So so that's what's happening there, and anything that we do in the habitat with our vegetation management fund has to have a site activity review, which is oversight from the Habitat Conservation Plan manager, so that we don't do any harm, and that everything we do is approved with a site activity permit. So it's very complicated, and I'm not surprised that everyone doesn't have it in their head. I don't even have it all in my head as many times as I've read it. So it's complicated. And the support that the City of Brisbane gives to the acres and the habitat management plan, it only enhances everything that we do. And we are trying to work together in a concerted effort with what we do. And Shelter Belt, Mark Heath, who is the contractor that the City of Brisbane uses for the vegetation management plan, also works with the county, attends the TAC meetings, is very well informed, and everyone is working together now in concert better than I've ever seen. So it's going really well. Firth Canyon, 2 years ago we worked in Firth Canyon for one of our habitat restoration days sponsored by OSEC, Mountain Watch, Parks, Beaches, and Recs in the City of Brisbane. And that canyon has an extensive amount of damage to it, both from invasive species and erosion and a lot of flooding that happened. Many of the canyons in Brisbane were badly damaged in the winter of 1982-83 when we had those tremendous floods and landslides. And basically what that did was it stripped off a lot of the native cover and protection that the canyons had with the massive amount of material that came down through those canyons during those events. And what that did was open up those canyons to ivy and other invasive plants and extensive amounts of erosion. We've worked really hard in Costañas Canyon, and we've been very successful with the habitat restoration days of working to eradicate a lot of the ivy and damage that was done during that. Firth Canyon, we worked really hard in it. Really, I've looked at the canyon a lot, and even though we had numerous volunteers working in the canyon, it was just a bigger job than what can be safely done by volunteers. And that canyon is a very valuable watershed. It has one of the oldest bay trees in the county in it. And my feeling was that this canyon, it's so vital and it so deserves some very tender, loving care beyond what a once or twice a year group of volunteers can do, and it needs professional help. And other members of the OSEC committee were at that restoration day that we did in that canyon and saw the true state of the canyon. Even with the amount of volunteers that were working there, we barely made a dent in in the canyon, and the way, even the shaping of the canyon and the hard packed areas of the canyon. And so we really felt that it needed professional attention, which is why we did not put it on our restoration, habitat restoration plans for this year, and instead are asking for professional help to get the canyon to a state where we can then take over stewardship of managing the ongoing good health of the canyon, like we're doing with Costaños Canyon. So instead, we moved out to a new area for habitat restoration this year. We actually did the meadow up at the Northeast Ridge along Mission Blue Drive and Monarch. Very successful event there. And we're doing Sierra Point Road Canyon on July 25th. We're doing the Sierra Point Road Canyon, which is a new canyon for us to work in. It's a very old canyon and has a lot of invasive material in it too. And that's why we asked for professional help with Firth Canyon. I think it's an incredibly valuable canyon. It's a waterway. It leads up to the mountain. It's frequently used by school kids and hikes and that type of thing, and it is in very bad shape. So can I answer any questions? I really appreciate you looking at this and potentially funding this incredible natural resource that we need to continue to protect. That's the city of Brisbane. Yeah.
I have a question. So you said it gets used by school kids. You're talking about Firth Canyon?
Yeah, there's a trail that goes up through it, and as we were kids, we played in that canyon all the time. But it's the last couple of years, it's been so overgrown with invasives. And just the way that the canyon is reconfiguring itself with erosion. Right. And they've put in some drain kind of things at the bottom of the canyon that haven't helped.
And where does it go up to? What's
it goes up, Firth Canyon goes on up and leads up onto the mountain eventually, if you go all the way to the end, and then there's a trail that kind of goes around. And
so if the work were done, would you think that it would make it a safer area to hike in?
Oh yeah, much safer. Right now it's not really safe.
Yeah, I've never walked in it.
It's really, I was shocked when I actually went all the way up the canyon. It was just how it has degraded so badly. And it is one of our parks. So any other questions I can answer? Thank you so much for letting me.
Oh, I have one.
And
I have a question really quickly. How, since it sounds like there's a lot of extensive work that needs to be done, how much time do you anticipate it would take if you had the budget and you had the funding to look at this? How long do you think it would take to help get the canyon back into order?
Well, the proposal that Shelter Belt put together was pretty extensive. How many hours? It was $63,000 was their proposal, and that encompasses a huge amount of hours on the part of Shelter Belt. Like, I think was it 300 man-hours or more? It'll take them a couple of, it may even take 2 seasons, but the longer we wait,
it's harder and more expensive it will be. It's interesting.
And not even just the more expensive, the less viable it would be. And once they get it to a state where we can bring in a group of volunteers, or we can do plantings, and we can start to make the canyon healthy again, then, but right now, it's any efforts that we do there would not be of benefit.
Yeah, and then if you did canyon cleanups with volunteers, they could be more on a maintenance basis, but you have to get it there because it sounds like it's almost like that leaky bucket where you put in efforts right now, but because it's so overwhelming, they don't make much of an impact, and it's just like you're kind of back where you started.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to get that perspective because when I was a kid, I did so many canyon cleanups, and I always thought that was the time that they got that attention. But it's very interesting for me to see how beyond that this project is, and to kind of put it into perspective, I think, for the council when we're looking at where to spend money, exactly the extent to which this needs some attention. So
Exactly.
Thank you.
You can go to Costanzas Canyon and you could look at the progress we've made year over year over year. You can say, wow, I pulled the ivy out of that tree and that tree is still here and surviving. And in Firth Park, it hasn't had, it's too much. And it's too, the way the canyon's configured now, it's too steep in some areas or to be safe to do that. I mean, I really don't want volunteers climbing up in trees to try to get the ivy down at that level.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just a final kind of emphasis on the funding issue. I just looked up on the website, the San Bruno Mountain Habitat Conservation Plan. So the 2016 annual report is on there. It's very extensive report on the status of the mountain. It's actually 82 pages long with a lot of different pieces of information in it. But this current year, we actually only have $85,000 budgeted for actual vegetation management work, and that actually includes the monitoring work we also do. So there is it's a very limited amount of money that's actually able to be spent.
Sure. All right. Yeah. Randy?
So that concludes Public Works presentation, so now may be a convenient time if there are other questions you have of me or my staff.
Anybody have other questions for Randy?
I had one question. I thought that you had mentioned the retaining wall on San Bruno Avenue.
Yes, ma'am.
And I thought that we had budgeted some of that in prior years.
We did.
And so that part of that would be carryover.
Stu, would you like to explain that, please?
Sure. So when it was budgeted 2 years ago, the work did not get completed at that time. There was no purchase orders put in for that, so there was no indication that that money should be carried over as part of the project. So it fell into the fund balance, so this is just using that portion of the fund balance that it had already fallen into. But because it fell into the fund balance, we have to rebudget it this year.
Okay, because we didn't put it into a special program.
Right, because we didn't allocate it specifically for that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Stu.
Anybody else?
Good to go, sir.
Thank you, Randy.
And sir, so the next item that's on your agenda is a San Bruno Mountain Watch presentation. I just want to offer you a quick clarification that's listed under Public Works, but Public Works is not offering you a position on this. We're neither opposed nor in support of it. And just the reason is that the final project came to you, and then a day or two later, staff got it. So that's not a judgment. It's just a statement that we didn't get to vet any concerns we might or may not have on it. So we're just completely neutral on it, and they're going to give you their presentation and their request for funding.
So I have one question on the presentation, and I don't want to try to rush them, but is it possible, if it's going to take more than just a few minutes, we can take a 5-minute break first?
Why don't we just take a 5-minute break?